Guys, what's going on? Quick introduction to this video. This is a conversation about Scott Pilgrim versus the World that I had with my buddy James, the comic book savant. And we had this conversation over Skype and used the Skype video recorder to capture the video. And I don't love the way that it looks or the way that it sounds, really. But I think the content is really good. I think the conversation we had is fantastic. It's a solid conversation. So if you can overlook those things, if you have any suggestions about how to better capture Skype audio and video, I'm all ears and all eyes. So with that being said, here's our conversation about Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Guys, what's going on? Welcome to Serial at Midnight. Something a little bit different for this video. This is going to be an episode of Spinner Rack Bros. I am joined by my buddy James, the comic book savant, longtime podcaster, and about 13 years, right?
Yeah, 13 years.
Early days of podcasting. You go back to almost the very, very beginning with podcasting. And so we've been doing some collaborations over on his podcast feed called Spinner Rack Bros. I think we've done 3 of them to date. And we're going to try some video out. And in this video, we're going to talk a little bit about Scott Pilgrim because I really like this movie. And you, James, had never seen this movie. As we were talking about it, I was like, you got to watch Scott Pilgrim. So I actually have no idea what you think about this movie. You might freaking hate this movie, but so I guess let's just get right into it. So what did you think about Scott Pilgrim?
Okay, well, it was so funny. We just were talking before recording an episode of Spinner Rack Bros, and we just had a general conversation, and Scott Pilgrim came up, and I realized it was like I had never seen the movie, and you were like, you've never seen Scott Pilgrim, and I knew it was like a cult following, and it was based on like a comic, and I knew just very little about it. So when you mentioned it, you're like, you gotta watch it. And I was like, well, where can I find it? He's like, I think it's on Netflix. So like literally that same night that we recorded that morning, that night, I went on Netflix. It was there. I was like, they pull stuff off of Netflix so fast. If I'm gonna watch it, I need to watch it now. And I watched it like that night. And I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it. It was one of those weird, like, meh in the middle. I'm glad I finally watched it. Maybe even if they had did a sequel, I would even watch that and enjoy it. It didn't prompt me because I read a lot of comics digitally. I talk about that a lot through my YouTube channel and the audio podcast. But and they have a lot on Comixology Unlimited on Scott Pilgrim, like the backlog of the actual comics. So I was like, well, if I really do like it, it's a lot there that I could then dive into it. But based on the movie, I was just like, yeah, I wouldn't, I just wouldn't go further with it. Yeah. I was like, if I could get the cliff notes like in a movie, it was so insane. It kind of put me in the mind of like watching an older movie like The Outsiders, where you saw all the actors, people that are big stars now that were in Scott Pilgrim. It was blowing my mind. I was like, you got Chris Evans, and I'm like, all these people like popping up in the movie, and I was like, wow, like, oh, they were in this, like, I didn't know that, like, but it was fun. I think that what hurt the movie for me was the beginning of the movie. It didn't, like, when he was doing going the dream state, how the movie opened. It took a while for me to adjust to how the story was being told, and him going from like daydreaming into what was real and it was very jarring for me. Okay. So I was like a little confused in the beginning, and then it settled down and I understood the rhythm after that. But they didn't establish it well if you're not familiar with the material in the beginning, and I think that hurt the overall experience for me of the movie, where I was detached because I was trying to be like, well, wait, is this a daydream now or is this real? He did, so I was like, okay. Then after I got the cadence of it, and I hadn't seen what's the director, Edgar Wright.
Yep.
I hadn't seen many of his movies. I probably think this was only the second movie I seen. Baby Driver, which I loved from him. So this might be the only second movie of his I've seen.
Okay.
And I could tell he's grown as a director between this and Baby Driver because he has a very distinct style.
Yeah.
But I think he was still establishing it here because just that opening it took me so long to attach to the characters. Where in Baby Driver, like, they were all so eccentric, but how he set them all up, I was into the characters and what at first I didn't really care about it. I was like, Scott's kind of a prick. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
type deal. So
He has growth through the
right.
movie. He ends in a different place than he started the movie. So that all makes perfect sense to me. I have not ever actually read any of the comics that it's based on, or the graphic, whatever we're calling them. I don't know if they were actually comics first or graphic novels first. That's a good thing, because they're like manga style.
Right, exactly. So they're hard to even classify, but they're comic book related.
But I think a lot of what Edgar Wright did in the movie is channeling the style of the comic, because it's got like this rubber. Though I haven't read it, I do know a lot about. Like I've heard a lot of people talking about it. It's got that reality, that weird reality, like what's like you were talking about, like reality drifting into daydreams and stuff, and then. I guess spoilers for Scott Pilgrim. If you guys are watching this, if you've never seen it, like I'm about to say something that might spoil it for you. But that's what I was telling you about. I was like, it's this kind of a movie, and then it becomes a completely different kind of a movie, and you're like, what? When they're at the thing, and the guy comes through the window, like flies through the window, and it challenges him to a fight.
Yeah.
I was just like. What? And then he beats him, and then there's like coins, and I was like, this is the most. This is either the most ambitious thing I have ever seen, or this is the most ridiculous failure. Like, it's either going to succeed wildly for me, or it's going to fail completely for me, because you have to embrace the concept of it. And if you're not on board with it, and if it doesn't work for you, like maybe with you, like if it doesn't work all the way, it doesn't work really at all. It doesn't sound like.
Well, I enjoyed it. Like, I think for me, like if I saw this somewhere for like $5 or something, I probably would buy it for like that. I don't know if I would pay 10 for it, because I don't know how much I would go back and revisit it. But around that part is where that part on clicked for me with the rest of the movie. Yeah. Because then I'm like, oh, this is the stuff we kind of grew up on. So it was like, it's fun. Nostalgic to the 80s, 90s and video game culture, and it embraces all that stuff that I grew up on and that me and you both grew up on so well. Like, I'm into that, but just like I said, it kind of to me stumbled out the gate. So I wouldn't say I hated it. I probably would give it, like, if I had to give it a 10, rated on a 10-point scale, it'd probably be like a 6.5, maybe even a 7, because the stuff that worked really worked, and it was fun, it was different, and oh gosh, I love the Asian girl that was like following him around the whole movie. I did not realize that oh gosh, who is she? She's one of the female wrestlers on Glow. This was her. Yeah, and I'm like looking it up. I was like, who is she? She seems familiar, but she's so young. I was like, I know her from something. So I go on IMDb and I'm like, oh snap! I was like, I love her character on. I love Glow. Have you watched Glow at all?
I have not. No.
Do that. Netflix tonight. You and Bree, that's an awesome show. It's 2 seasons. They're only half-an-hour episodes. Y'all can kill it in the weekend, and it's fun. Okay. Yeah, it's so fun. It's fun to binge, and I know they've renewed for a 3rd season, but it's really good show. And I was like, oh wow, like this is her younger,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, so I loved her. She was like so adorable and funny throughout the whole movie. It was, I think she was my favorite character. Like, she stole the movie from me.
She gets the highlights punched out of her hair.
Yeah.
There's so many people in the movie that went on to be, like you're talking about Chris Evans. He has like that great line where what is he? He says like, the first click you hear will be me hanging up. The second will be me pulling the trigger. That's such a great line. It's so stupid.
There's so many other people. I mean, I didn't write a list down of everybody, but I was like, this so
Brandon Routh.
That's right. Yes.
It's Mr. Superman.
What? Mary. What's her name? Mary Elizabeth.
Mary Elizabeth Winstead.
Because she's gonna be in the Birds of Prey movie. She's like Black Canary or something, if I remember correct.
Yeah. I'm not up to date on that news. That's why we need the comic book savant for news like that.
Yeah, so I was tripping. I was like, wow, we got Captain America, we got Black Canary,
Captain Marvel.
Yes, she was in the movie, and I was tripping at the time. I was like, wow, like so many actors spun out of it. It immediately made me think of American Graffiti or The Outsiders for our generation, of all the actors that we would then spin off to become huge stars. So I was like, wow, like for that, I think I would pick it up I've been on this thing because watching your YouTube channel and knowing you for as long as I've known you, you just had this influence on me, and now like I'm on this mission to buy every comic book movie ever. And like if the price
I
is
don't
right,
want
I'm gonna get
responsibility
it.
for that.
I'm gonna get it. So I've been buying like the worst movies
I know
ever.
you're like, I picked up the Fantastic Four double pack, and I'm maybe like,
I even picked up. I
I'm
finally
like, don't
picked
put that on me.
up. I even picked up the bad one, the more recent one. I got that one for like $5. I picked that one up recently. Yeah, it's bad. But this is
Yeah, I
not
have
bad.
a
But like
lot
I
of
said,
it.
this is like I said, it's different, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's I wouldn't put it up there with Avengers: Infinity War. Like I gotta watch this again, like immediately. But it is historic for it covers a different genre, and we need that in the movies as well as in the comics. You need different genres and play with different tropes and do different things. Like you said, you think it's one movie, so he breaks through there, and then you see the one up and the coins, and it's like this is awesome. I was like, I
Yeah.
don't know if it's right, but it works all at the same time, So I appreciate it for that. So like I don't hate it. It's I wouldn't put it in my top five or even top 10, but
Okay.
I think it's important. I think it's an important movie, and if you're a comics fan, watch it. It doesn't hurt. Like if you can watch it on Netflix or get it for a few bucks, support it.
Yeah. Well,
So
let me add this too, because I am on record. I really, really like this movie. I think it's my favorite Edgar Wright movie. Who I am a fan of. The only movie of his that I haven't seen is Baby Driver, which I did pick up for Black Friday. We just haven't had a chance to watch it yet. But
mhm.
I do really like him. He's one of us. Like he's a comic book fan, a video game fan, retro culture fan. Like he grew up when we grew up. He's a not a peer. That's not the right. He's one of our contemporaries. So
Right.
he has the same influences that we do, and he wears them on his sleeve. And so it's hard not to really like him. But this movie is kind of towards the beginning of what I would call reference culture, and reference culture has actually become so big and so influential that I don't know. To me, it can be a bad thing because it has replaced actual original storytelling. So I have to try to put Scott Pilgrim in a context of its time and place as being kind of before a lot of that. And it is I don't know if it's an important movie, but it was. For me, it's like a marker in time of like it even feels kind of dated to me now, but it has like this distinct feel of what that culture was like, the video game, comics, what the geek culture was like, 10 years ago or whenever the movie came out. It's older than that, I think, but and we've just evolved so much since then. In some ways for the better, and in some ways not so much. And I think we could cynically look at the movie and be like, well, it's basically just referencing a bunch of things to make its own story, which I don't know that it's doing. But here I'm counter arguing against this movie that I actually really like. But I think that that's something that needs to be brought up. Is like it is a reference culture movie, but it kind of predates a lot of the reference culture. So I give it more credit than maybe I should for like little hairs floating all over the place, for being one of those first kind of movies to actually do that. Because we have a lot of that now, but back then we
Right.
didn't.
Exactly.
When that movie came out, the geeks had not inherited the earth yet. It was still
Right.
very much like on the rise. And so maybe there's a little bit of sentimentality that I hold
Right.
for it too.
And this
Maybe
and this
nostalgia.
Right, and think about it now. One example, like you said, that it was the first of its kind. Ready Player One. You look at Ready Player One. That's a kind of reference point that.
Yes,
And if
exactly.
it came out, you think about if Scott Pilgrim was to come out now compared to coming out then, it wouldn't have been. It was an okay success, but it was a cult classic. It could have done box office like Ready Player One did now. So it's all about the timing and the place of it as well, like you
And
said.
I'm on record as saying Ready Player One kind of leaves me cold. It doesn't do a lot for me. So it's interesting, time and place, how all that kind of factors into how we form these opinions.
And you see it more and more. Like timing is everything. I feel like with movies, especially like I was just watching Solo again recently, and I
Okay.
was like, I remember felt weird about it when I watched it in the theaters, and I had bought, we had got it, and I hadn't watched it. And I know my wife had watched it a few times, and I was like, I'm gonna watch it. I'm gonna watch the movie, and I was like, this movie's fun. For what it is, it's fun, and I want to see more of this. And I was like, I think if if it wasn't so close to The Last Jedi,
Yeah.
that, it could have done way better than what it did. And they blamed all the other stuff for it. But I'm like, it was still a good movie. I'm like, people felt the way they felt about The Last Jedi, and it's polarizing movie, but it was the timing. If they just would have held off a little longer and then put that movie out, I think it would have did so much better than what it did, and we would be potentially getting a sequel now. Because I want that. I want to see more of that. That was a fun place to be, and the actors, I felt like they were just getting a grasp on the characters and everything. Like they could take it and and run with it. So we're seeing that now. Timing, you can tell with certain movies. Deadpool, the first Deadpool, it came out at the perfect time, Valentine's, and it was a hit. Second one, did well as well, but I felt like if they would have just stayed in that February pocket, timing is so important nowadays because so many movies are out there. So if you can find your little niche in that, how can you forecast something like that? You can. You just gotta get lucky.
Yeah. Well, I think we've done it. I think we've talked about as much about Scott Pilgrim as we can. So if people are watching this, if you guys are watching this and you like this kind of conversation, we have done this in the past. We will continue to do this. This is Spinner Rack Bros, because we're comic fans first and foremost who also have a love of movies and pop culture and stuff like that. So the other three that we've done are at the Comic Book Savant feed. Tell people where they can find you. YouTube, podcast.
You can find me on YouTube at youtube.com/comic book savant. The website is comicbooksavant.com. I'm on iTunes. I'm on Stitcher, iHeartRadio, all the different places. Just search for Comic Book Savant. You should be able to find me and find our episodes of Spinner Rack Bros. I think we actually done. Well, this is the fifth one. We did 4. I went back and looked.
Oh.
I think so. We've done 4 audio episodes, and this would be the 5th, and this is our first video.
Okay.
So we're experimenting with different formats and just trying to bring you guys the conversation that we just normally have. Hitting some of these topics and just having fun with it. So
the last podcast that we did, we talked it was almost an hour and a half, right?
Mm-hmm.
About the Warner Brothers movies, the DC streaming service. So if you guys are interested, definitely check that out because it was no holds barred.
It was a really good conversation, and so it was. We have fun, and we're good friends. We've known each other for over a decade at this point. Yep. So we just went no holds barred, talking about all the rights and wrongs in the comic book industry in general. But it did spark off of the Warner Brothers and DC films, and spilled over to everything else. So definitely check that out if you haven't already.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that being said, I guess we'll wrap this one up. Comic Book Savant, Serial at Midnight. Anything else you want to add before we sign off?
No, that's it. Just check out our content. Give us some feedback. Let us know if it's what you like, what you didn't like, what you'd like to see us do in the future, and we'll bring it to you.
Yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching. We appreciate you, and we will catch you later.